So my name is Ann Gottlieb. I am the Director of Presence at Mobius Executive Leadership, and I have the honor to introduce our guest speaker, my dear friend, who many of you know and many of you have worked with, Jen Cohen. Jen Cohen is a Mobius Senior Expert and also my close friend of years. She is also the co-founder, along with Gina LaRoche, of Seven Stones Leadership, our sister firm that specializes in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and living and leading sustainably. Jen is known as a coach's coach. Can you raise your hands if you have either been coached by her, taught by her, or worked with her? Yes. Many, all of you, and many more, and I am included in that group. She has been a coach, a senior coach to the Newfield Group, one of the nation's top schools for coaching. She has a niche in coaching world-class academicians from institutions such as Simmons and the Harvard Business School, who are working in quantum physics, ontology. Her work in quantum physics, understanding, ontology, neuroscience, somatics, and systems thinking inform her innovative and embodied approaches to curriculum design and facilitation. She holds a master's degree in applied psychology from Antioch, New England Graduate School, and is certified as a Master Somatic Coach by the Strozzi Institute. Her work is informed by 2 decades of working with executives, and her work is informed by decades of working with human beings and souls and hearts, and I can speak to that. Her work changes people. She goes beneath what one might expect. It's beyond strategy into something that might, in fact, liberate completely new ways of thinking and acting in the world. She is the co-author with Gina LaRoche of the 7 Laws of Enough. The book was named 4 Life Lifting Books for 2019 and beyond. 4 Life Lifting Books for 2019 and beyond by Black Enterprise. Jennifer has been interviewed by numerous NPR affiliates and media outlets throughout the world. She is also the author of the chapter From Surviving to Thriving, which is a book it's a chapter in the book Being Human at Work, edited by Richard Strozzi Heckler. I'm going to go on and on about your accomplishments and your credits, but I just want to say how lucky we are to have someone like Jen, who is continually pushing the limits, experimenting, trying things herself, asking really significant and important questions about the future. And she's a great coach. So, Jen, thank you. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. I'd like to issue an invitation that you go on a little journey with me through space and time to a place on the globe called Ladakh. For those of you who like maps, there's Ladakh. Ladakh is at the border of China and India. It's in the Himalayas, and the people who live there have lived there for many hundreds, if not thousands of years. Not the people who live there now, obviously, but all of the people from that community. And they live at somewhere between 10 and 14,000 feet. Okay, so it's a difficult and strenuous life. I became familiar with Ladakh through a woman who's an anthropologist. Her name is Helena Norberg Hodge, which I stumble over often trying to say. I dare you to try to say her name 3 times fast. But anyway, Helena Norberg Hodge. And she had the privilege of visiting Ladakh a little over 50 years ago for the first time. And at that moment in time, Ladakh had been pretty much untouched by the West. Their traditional ways of life were intact, and they had not found out about us, and we had not found out about them. And what caught my attention was two things. There were certain things that were present in Ladakh when Hodge first encountered this community. But more significantly to me in deepening my understanding of systems and context was what was missing in Ladakh when she encountered them. So some of the things that were present in Ladakh were an intergenerational, interwoven community life. People believed that they were part of the fabric of creation. They were a part of everything, and everything was part of them. It was a fundamental set of assumptions and beliefs informed by many hundreds of years of mostly Tibetan Buddhism in that region, but some Muslim traditions as well. They lived together, they worked together, they cooked together, they danced together in intergenerational clusters. They were self-sufficient. They used local resources and tools. Everybody in Ladakh knew how to build a house. Does anybody here know how to build a house? I don't. I didn't raise my hand because I know. I just was prompting you. So when conflict happened, which was rare, almost immediately, if two beings or a family or people from neighboring villages were beginning to experience some kind of disharmony together, almost immediately the community would gather. And the belief was you just didn't want things to get very far down that road before you healed them. So everything stopped until harmony was restored among whomever it was that was beginning to feel out of sorts with one another. So that's some of what was present in Ladakh. Now here's what was missing, completely missing. Violence. They had no violent crime. They had no sexual abuse, they had no physical abuse, they had no domestic violence, they had no suicide. Those things weren't just on the margins or infrequent, they did not happen. For those of you who think in systems, there's a common phrase, structure shapes behavior. Structure shapes behavior. A society, an organization, a family, a body is a structure. And it shapes what's possible and available for the people inside that structure. At Seven Stones, we like to say the context is decisive. Okay, the context isn't nice, it isn't kind of important, it isn't interesting, it's decisive of what's possible. 50 years after Helena Norberg Hodge encountered Ladakh, they encountered us. And there is now crime. We brought them progress. We brought them growth. We brought them a place on the economic map that we live by. And then we also brought them suicide and low self-esteem and a sense of disconnection and dislocation. And we brought them poverty because that didn't exist. They were self-sufficient. but they weren't committed to growing. They were committed to thriving and surviving and sharing what they had in their communities. Our values of progress and growth and accumulation brought with them things that we take for granted as the way that they are. It's just the way that it is. Diabetes is the way that it is. Crime is the way that it is. Sexual abuse is the way that it is. These things, it hit me like a ton of bricks. These things are not the way that it is. They're contextual. They're driven by the assumptions and beliefs and then the systems that we erect and then forget we did and call it the way that it is. This moment in history demands that we remember what we've forgotten. So I had a fantasy about bringing every single person in this room a snow globe, but I did not fulfill on that fantasy. But you can imagine that you are sitting with your personal little snow globe right there. And there's a caption underneath the snow globe. Honey, it's so strange. It's the same every time. First, there's an earthquake, and then it snows. We act like that, but we're inside a context. We're inside a snow globe, and there are worlds upon worlds that are outside it. Okay, so what does this have to do with the title of my talk and all the things? We're going to skip that, and we're going to skip that. And we're going to introduce my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Karim Lakhani. So recently I received a telephone call from this man. I have his permission to share his name and all the things. He knows I'm telling stories about him right now. I've known Karim for about 20 plus years. He's a professor, very esteemed human with all those credentials next to his name. He's a professor at Harvard Business School, and he founded an institute called D Cubed Institute at Harvard Business School. He spent his career researching innovation, digital transformation, and artificial intelligence. Karim is a pretty balanced guy. He doesn't get agitated by a lot of things or super upset or concerned by a lot of things. He's like, we'll figure it out. Even big things, and he's up to big things. He's not really doing very small things. So, but he still lives in like, we'll figure it out. Somehow we'll figure it out. So he calls me one day recently, and he didn't sound exactly like that. He didn't sound like his normal, balanced self. He had a level of concern in his voice that I almost never hear from him. And he said, we need to talk. I said, okay, let's talk. What you got for me? And he said, if you're not having an existential crisis as you look at these models, these large language models, you're not paying attention. And I was like, existential crisis? Karim, existential crisis in the same sentence? Wow, okay, I'm now really paying attention. I'm really, really, really paying attention. He said, this is iterating so much faster than we understood that it was going to iterate. And the leaders that I am working with are not prepared. They are not prepared. They're not even close to prepared, and we need to prepare them. He said, they're asking questions that need to be asked. They're not asking irrelevant questions or stupid questions, but they're not asking the questions that this moment demands. Not even close. So he invited me to come to one of these CEO roundtables that he holds with one of his colleagues at HBS. And all these CEOs are in the room, and they're introducing AI and what's going to happen and how organizations can upskill and start to embed all the technology into their workflow, all the things, right? They start to do the thing. And then they get to the section of the talk that he warned me about leaders not really being caught up with the moment. And so he and his colleague asked the question, what are you most concerned about with AI? And they say things like, my market share, or that all my workers are already using AI and hiding it from us, and we don't really know how to handle them, or what is going to happen to my workforce? Maybe we're starting to ask slightly more relevant questions to the moment, like what's going to happen if I don't need half my people? What does that mean for my business? And he was right. Those questions are fine. They're not illegitimate questions, but they are not the questions of the moment. So, I seem to have a lot of friends in this space right now, which is slightly strange, given that I'm something of a Luddite. But the joke is always on us, right? So I have another dear colleague who I actually met here at NPI, the first year I taught here. Some of you know her very well, and others of you may not. And her name is Valerie Pisano, and she is the CEO of an organization called Mila in Montreal, Canada. Mila was started by this man, Yoshua Bengio, who has dedicated his entire life to researching and developing artificial intelligence technology. They are really at the epicenter, along with Kareem and some others, of looking at what does ethical AI mean. And Professor Bengio is one of the people, many of the people in this room may be aware of it. A letter went out after ChatGPT came out that was penned by several scientists. He was one of those scientists that said, we actually need to pause. We need to stop what we're doing. This is moving more quickly and in ways that we could not anticipate, and we all as a human community need to take a deep breath together. So that letter got a lot of attention, but it didn't produce the result he wanted, or any of the people who helped pen it wanted. And I have the privilege and the opportunity to talk with Val pretty consistently about what's happening. And I asked her, she could not be here. She sometimes comes to NPI. Most years she comes to NPI, but she could not be here this year. So I asked her if she'd be willing to beam on in, because we can do all that now. And so she is going to join us. And it's only going to be her voice. You get to look at her beautiful face, but you will hear her voice. And I asked Val one question and asked her to speak to one question. So audio, please. Hi, Val.
Hi, Jen.
Thanks for doing this.
Of course.
I have one question for you. What is the probable, almost certain future for the unfolding of AI as it's happening now?
It's reasonable to expect, and it's the declared intention of many of the companies that are now building these AIs, that we will live in a world where there are machines that are unrelenting in their pursuit of very specific goals, and that have superhuman level capabilities in both reasoning, problem solving on the one hand, but also in persuasion and influence, using language, which is really the operating system of humankind, to influence ideas and actions. We, the humans, will be in a constant state of coexistence and interaction with a new species, the machines, that will be extraordinarily able to plan for scenarios, make decisions, foster a sense of intimacy and trust, and execute. And as this species gains an agency, humankind will progressively give away power, which really could lead to catastrophic outcomes on democracy, the economy, national security, essentially the future of human life on Earth. And while progress in AI is inevitable at this stage, we really have passed a pivot point. There's no going back. Its impact is not. AI is not happening to us. And it is us. We are the generation, the first and the only generation to see the advent of AI and to navigate it. We absolutely have the right to judge this moment and the responsibility to act.
What is the timeline from your point of view if we don't collectively start to step in and shape the unfolding of this? If it just continues on as currently progressing.
Some of what is concerning is already happening, namely through social media platforms. So it's not really in the future. But some of the more drastic impacts could arrive as soon as within 3 to 5 years, which is the timeline that these companies and labs have explicitly publicly stated as kind of their goal. Within 3 to 5 years, we will have created machines that are at least as capable, but potentially even more capable, more intelligent than humans. And so between now and then, as some of these capabilities come about, we're going to be confronted to all kinds of impacts, namely in terms of how machines get inserted in how we exchange information and analyze or perceive the shared reality that we're in based on that information, but also in some of the foundational structures in terms of how we get organized and how key decisions are made. For example, in the financial sector, or in terms of the judicial system in the U.S., things are already happening. So it's fast. In terms of how quickly we need to adapt, it's a historically short time frame.
Thank you.
The biggest question for us in the months and years ahead will be, what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be human in a world where machines know more and are able of at least as much?
Okay, thank you.
What does it mean to be human in a world where machines know more and are in many, many cases more capable than we are? So take a moment, everybody, and just let your eyes close if you're willing, or just let your attention go inward. Just notice, what does it mean to be human in a world where the machines are, in many cases, more capable than we are? Just notice what's happening inside you right now. Sensations, feelings, thoughts. And notice in particular, if you have any sense of resistance to what Val is saying and to the concerns that Kareem expressed to me. And then notice if there's any sense of concern rising in you, or maybe even fear. Many of you have your notebooks from class, from your track learning, but if you did not bring a notebook, there is a little tiny white index card underneath your seat. If you need a pen, we can provide you with a pen, but hopefully you have one of those too. And just take a moment to just jot down whatever's here for you, what you became aware of, what you notice about resistance. If you're not a writer, that's fine. You can just sit and be, or you could stand up and move. Does anybody need a pen? Very good. Thank you. I have trusty helpers. What time is it? Do you know what time it is? Now I want to add a layer to this. Some of you noticed, and I think some of you didn't, which is all fine, that we delineated a couple of particular spaces in the room. One of the spaces that we reserved seating for or created a context for is democracy. So raise your hand if you're sitting in democracy. No, there should be 4 rows. If you don't have yellow tape around your seat, you're not sitting in democracy. Great, thank you, democracy. We also delineated capitalism in the room. We could have delineated a million different contexts, right? But we delineated 2. Democracy is here, and if you're sitting in capitalism, whether you like it or not, you're sitting in capitalism anyway, so raise your hand high and proud. Very good. Thank you. Everybody else is actually sitting in the space of infinite possibility. You're sitting in a place where no lines have been drawn yet, where nobody's declared anything about the way that it is, or the way that it should be, or the way that we're going to design it. So now you know who you are if you're sitting in democracy or capitalism or in the field, in the space. And just take a moment to check in now. If you're capitalism, what kind of resistance or fear or comments or feelings or sensations come up for you about what Val said? Maybe you're super happy about it, I don't know. Just check in. If you happen to be in Esther's track, you're probably already practicing taking up space in certain ways, where you just start to become a space, a field, a context. So if you're sitting in in capitalism, same thing. What did I say? Whichever, you get it, right? I think I reversed it. So if you're sitting in democracy, what does democracy have to say? If you're sitting in capitalism, what does capitalism have to say? And then if you're sitting in the field, outside either of those spaces, and you hear Val, what do you become aware of? So just take another moment and see if you want to write anything down. So let's get a shout out. And because this is a talk and not a workshop and not a whole thing that we're all doing together, I'm just going to ask for one comment from each space, okay? I'm going to come down closer to hear your comments. So would someone from capitalism like to speak. You can speak both from yourself when I first asked the question, and you can also speak from capitalism. Just 1 or 2 sentences. Don't be shy. Yes, thank you.
Lower income individuals are already at high risk under capitalism. How could this make it worse?
Thank you. Someone from democracy.
Decisions in the hands of a few people.
Decisions in the hands of a few people. It's just a thought or phrase or something that came up through him. Now, if you're sitting in the field of infinite possibility, and some people found out about capitalism and moved very quickly to the field of infinite possibility when they got in the room earlier. So if you are sitting in the field, someone, anything, what's available to you? What do you hear about this moment? About resistance or fear or anything else as you heard Val speak? Yes, please.
I feel no fear in this place, and AI can take the position of a human being. It's not going to be a human being. The feelings cannot be achieved through AI, like feeling each other and connect with each other and find each other through this way. I cannot see AI achieving that.
May it be so. Thank you. So the first thing she said, which I think she said before she had the mic, was I feel, sitting in the field of infinite possibility, I feel no fear. That may not be true for everybody. It's not one-stop shopping, but that is what she said, and I wanted you to hear it. So in designing this conversation, we felt like it was really important to bring up everything that stops us from looking, which we began to just touch the surface of. Last night, Bernardus offered us the opportunity to bring all kinds of parts of self into the room. We're inviting you, I'm inviting you to bring all that's here to contend with as we face this moment. And the good news is this entire program, NPI, is designed to give all of us the skills to move back and forth between all of the possibilities and then defining the spaces. Those skills can be learned, they can be taught, they can be cultivated. No, I don't want that. All right, so we've heard this quote. Has anybody in this room not heard this quote? We've heard this quote a bajillion times. I don't think we understand in any deep way what he actually meant. No problem can be solved at the same level of consciousness that created it. This moment demands that we widen the frame and step outside the current set of assumptions that we live in to ask the questions about the future. There are people in the AI space right now that are actually talking about post-capitalist futures, when half the world doesn't need to work anymore, or maybe all of the world doesn't need to work anymore. So the set of assumptions that we live in about growth, about progress, about accumulation, they may not apply very soon. We and our leaders are not prepared well for those conversations. And they need to start happening now-ish. right now. Because this moment demands that we actually remember that while the context is decisive, we create context. There's a field of infinite and incredible possibilities, and then we delineate spaces. Capitalism, democracy, social, I mean, millions of spaces. There's layers and layers and layers of context creation that we do. And then we act like this is the way it is and we're stuck with it. We are not stuck with it. We made it this way. There are evidence, although we're destroying it more and more, of communities and cultures on this planet that don't have the things we assume are just part of the deal. That's important for us to know and notice and remember as we are talking to people about their market share or about whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish in their business. So, let yourself close your eyes one more time. We're going to get the scissors out. Everybody close your eyes. Nothing bad is going to happen to you because of the scissors. So my trusty helpers are going to eliminate the two contexts that are in the room so that everybody can be sitting in the field of infinite possibility. Now, human beings here on this finite earth plane need boundaries. We need to delineate spaces to function together, to be alive and be in communities. I'm not anti-delineation, just so we're clear. And actually, Gina and I, my business partner Gina and I, really took this notion that we can create new contexts, we took it to heart. And we spent a good decade really, really, really rigorously looking at the context, the dominant context that we're living in of separation and fear and scarcity and progress and growth and all of the assumptions that are embedded in this kind of societal structure, and asked ourselves, what would it be like to actually be in a different context? Not looking at one context from another context, but what would it be like to actually go from one context? Who do you have to become? How do you have to train yourself? How do you have to see life and the world to actually be in a different context? And then what would it feel like in that context? What would life be like? How would Seven Stones, our organization, function? What would we do differently than what's currently being done? So we've been geeking out on this for about 20 years now. And we named our context, because we're kind of audacious like that, sustainable abundance. There are many names for what we're referencing here. This is not the only one. But we wanted, remember this morning, oh my God, it's like 1,000 years ago for some of you, right? This morning, Amy introduced two different axes, right? There's the vertical axes and the horizontal axes. So we wanted to cover both because we like to be thorough. And we said that this paradigm or this context to hold what's coming, to hold what we need for a thriving human and non-human community needs to be sustainable. And that's a word, it's a popular word. We get it. Our definition of sustainable is ethical, reciprocal, and just. And we could have a whole conversation about all three of those terms and why we chose them and what they reference and how that gets erected and enacted in a community and an organization. We're not going to do that here. But we said that to be sustainable, you have to have an ethic. You have to understand and practice reciprocity with life, with each other, with Earth. And you have to actually have a relationship with what is just. On the vertical axis, we said abundance. You know, if you remember sitting in the field of infinite possibility, every single thing that's here was a gift. The mangoes were a gift. The bananas were a gift. The trees were a gift. The mountains and the rivers and the waterfalls, the whole thing was a gift. We drew the lines. We did that. We said some people get some of the gifts and other people don't get any of the gifts, and it's based on this and that and the other thing. We did that. We did it. And we're still doing it. We keep repeating it over and over and over again, and it's a deadly habit. It's a truly, truly deadly habit. Everything here was offered freely to all of us. And it tastes good. Mangoes taste good. It didn't have to be like that, right? We could have somehow seen the mountains were ugly. We don't. We think they're beautiful. It's amazing. What's here is amazing. But abundance without sustainable becomes what Trogiem Trungpa called spiritual materialism, which we're really into, especially in the United States. It's like a vast industry, spiritual materialism. Anyway, that's another talk. So we called the paradigm sustainable abundance. And look at that. Did you see that? If you missed it, I have no idea how to repeat it. So it's a context that we felt like was broad enough and wide enough that it could hold a future that was worthy of all of us. And inside that context, or something like it that you name, we can ask the questions that need to be asked now. What, if anything, in the current economic model will need to change in the age of AI? And right now, I just learned this from a podcast that I really love. There are 8 men on this planet, and they own as much wealth as 4 billion other human beings. Is there anything that needs to change about the economic model in the age of AI? Now, most leaders are like, what? I just want my business to do well. Even if it's a big business, a large business that has a large share of the market, there aren't that many leaders asking that kind of question. They're assuming a lot of things about the current model as stable that are not to be assumed now. The social order. Given the rise globally of authoritarianism, how can democracy be maintained in the age of AI, deep fakes and misinformation? And why does it matter for a leader of a food company or something else? Why does it matter that they actually think about that right now? We, as the people supporting those people, expanding their frames, need to have a frame for ourselves about this, so that when we enter those conversations, we know something about the territory that we're in together. None of us have any answers, just so we're clear, but we can walk differently in the territory together. The organization of labor. It's really, really up for grabs. Somebody I was talking to earlier was talking about, entry-level workers, and we're not going to need any of them. This is vertical. This is not strata by caste. This is vertical, the change that we're going to see. Lawyers, doctors, marketing, specialists, you and me, the coaches and the consultants. Labor itself. What is the true purpose of work? Why do we work? We're mostly just cleaning up our messes, as far as I can tell. We make the mess and then we clean it up, or don't, or whatever we do about the mess. But why do we do that? Then Val's question, what is human? What's left for us? This technology is changing us. It's changing our bodies. It's changing our minds. It's changing our memories. I don't know how many conversations you've had lately about all the things that nobody can remember anymore, but I've had a lot of those conversations. In fact, my daughter has, one of the modern learning challenges that are being bandied about, and we were at a lecture around ADHD, and the person at her university was saying that the working memory, which is a part of executive function, this is not an executive function talk, but as part of executive function, working memory is one element. And he said that they're noticing a decline in working memory in all the students, not the students just with ADHD, but in every single person, there is a decrease in our ability to remember. We're outsourcing our memory. They asked us at this freshman orientation, how many people know their spouse's phone number? Like, have that memorized? Not a lot of hands went up. It was crazy. Not a lot of hands went up. The purpose of life itself. Why are we here? What are we doing? What is all this for? Where do we think we're going? This time requires you have a relationship with these questions, I have a relationship with these questions, and everybody we are serving has a relationship with these questions. Not tomorrow, not someday in the future, right now. And you, because you're here, because of this work, we really are well equipped to shift the level of consciousness that we are at, to look at this from the outside of it, from outside the lines that we've drawn, to design something that isn't the probable, almost certain future that Val gave us. There's still a little bit of time for that, people. And it's our time, now, right this moment. So I want to share a little something that Gina and I created. And just sit back and let the words and the music wash over you as we begin to come to a close. So hopefully I cued the people in the back by saying words and music. This is our moment, people, and our children require us to move now. I'd like to dedicate the talk to my daughter and to Gina's sons, Jackson and Griffin, and to all your children and their children. Thank you. And before we go, I have a special thanks to 3 beautiful, incredible women. One is Gina, first one on the, I guess is the left. She's my business partner and my co-conspirator in all of this. And just thank you for everything, honey. I know you're watching. And to Anne, who got a hold of me, or I got a hold of her, and we went from an in-the-box keynote to hopefully an out-of-the-box keynote. And thank you so much for your gorgeousness, your brilliance, and your friendship over all these years. Thank you so much for your help. And to Amy, who I think is not in the room, who made all this for us and has for her whole life been on a journey to remember the truth of who she really is and invite us on that journey with her so that we may be able to support a world on the brink. So thank you for your kind attention and your participation, and that's it.